Welcome to the Private Practice for School Counselors channel, where school counselors find options and grow opportunities. Hi, I'm Jenny, and I want to share a little bit with you today about why I wanted to start this channel for school counselors that might be interested in doing private practice. I'm going to share a little bit about my story personally, and then also tell you a little bit about what to expect from future videos so you know kind of what we're going to get into. So I've worked as a school counselor in public schools for the last 20 years, and I just started full-time private practice this year. And I was doing half and half, 3 days a week in the school, 3 days a week private practice last year. And then for a few years before that, I was doing full-time school counseling, but then also doing just some amount of private practice on the side. With the private practice, I have been working with adults only. And so that's a little bit kind of to tell you my short story, and I'll get into more details here in just a minute. But to tell you a little bit more about what has led me to want to make this channel for other school counselors, I have been doing clinical supervision for other school counselors for a little while, for a number of years, and I'm seeing how there's kind of a common theme. School counselors are doing everything possible in schools to be the best that they can be and provide for their students. And there's a lot of barriers, there's a lot of parts and pieces to being a school counselor that can be very challenging. I don't want to dissuade anybody from going into the field and working in schools. I think it's amazing in so many ways, and it's super needed. And so the point of me starting this channel is definitely not meant to take away from people that would want to be working in schools. But I've also seen a lot of folks who either they're just getting burned out for a variety of reasons working in schools, or there could be things like they're just going through some life transitions where they're taking care of young kids, for example, and they're wanting something more part-time or something more flexible. And private practice can be a good option for folks. So I just want to be able to share what I've learned along the way so that folks that maybe are also wanting to look at that but needing more information about kind of what are all the nuts and bolts to getting started with it can come here to this channel and ideally be able to get that information. So I am trained as a clinical supervisor and also as a therapist, but for the purposes of what I'm going to be doing in this video and all the future videos, if you're watching this video, definitely don't take me as being your clinical supervisor or therapist. I'm not either of those things to you as a viewer, but rather just kind of someone who wants to share and hopefully be helpful to you in your own process. With that, if you do find that anything that I am sharing is helpful, useful to you, if you're getting benefit out of it, then I hope that you would consider subscribing to the channel, liking the channel, sharing it, and that way it helps other people to actually be able to find it and hopefully also benefit from it. So I'm going to go through a little bit today and just tell you more about who I am, and then share a gist of like what we're actually going to be doing in future videos, so you kind of have a sense for where we're going with this whole thing. So to start with, I am going to start over 20 years ago. I was living and working as a Peace Corps volunteer in West Africa, and I really didn't know a lot at the time about how the world works. So that was really a time for me to discover that a lot of things, including healthcare and education, that I believe everybody should have access to. Everyone deserves to have those things, to have really high quality healthcare and education, but that's not actually how things work. And I learned that really starting in the Peace Corps. That opened my eyes to see that there's not equity when it comes to everybody getting access to those things. And at some point, I also recognized that even right back where I come from and all over the United States, there also is a huge need for people to get equal access to education and high quality education, as well as healthcare and other things. After I got done with the Peace Corps, I came back and I started a alternative program to get a master's in education. And I was going to be a teacher originally. I was working in the classroom as a first grade teacher while getting trained. And I learned pretty quickly that being a first grade teacher wasn't quite the right fit for me. But I saw what the school counselor at that school was doing and realized that actually would be the perfect fit for me. That's what I would want to be doing. So I quit that program, stopped teaching first grade, and I came back to Colorado, where I'm from, where my family is. I went back to school. I went to the University of Northern Colorado and got my master's for school counseling. And then I decided after I graduated to go back to New Mexico, where I had been doing the alternative program. I worked my first job as a school counselor in New Mexico there, and I was in a rural area. I was living on the Navajo Nation, but working for a public school district that was not the Navajo Nation. And most of the other colleagues and people that were working in the school as teachers were white, but all of the students were Navajo. I learned a ton there, and a couple of the things that really stand out to me from that time was just how there was a lot of need with the staff as well as students. I was doing a lot of suicide assessments, for example, but I would lie awake at night really wondering if they were going to get what they needed and deserved as far as resources go, because there weren't a lot of places that I could give them as far as options. And that was hard. And then I think it made it harder that I was not finding enough outlets for myself. I had a guitar. I would walk down the street to a gas station and get snacks. But other than that, I didn't have some of the things that I think are really helpful for me. Having a library, having a gym, certain things like that just really helped me to kind of digest and have more of a balance with whatever hard things might be going on at work. So my mental health just wasn't like where it needed to be for me to sustain myself working there long term. So I stayed for a year and then I came back to Colorado again. And I did a variety of things, but I ended up eventually getting into Denver Public Schools, which is where I have spent the majority of my career as a school counselor. Soon after I got my first job working for DPS, I thought that I was set. I really liked the school. I liked the community. I was happy to be there. And I took for granted that I would just be able to stay there as long as I wanted. So around 2 years into me working at this school, there was a staff meeting, and the principal announced that my job was going to be cut due to budget issues. And that's when I realized my job is not secure. I cannot take it for granted. And in that time frame, I decided to start working on my licensed professional counselor certification. I didn't really know what I was going to do with it. I just wanted to have options. And then I also knew that the district would give us a stipend just for getting the LPC. And I know there's a lot of other districts that do this as well. So that was really my reason at the time. I was just getting the LPC so I could get the stipend and maybe have future options at some point if I needed or wanted that. While I was getting that LPC, taking tests and getting supervision, I was working in an elementary school. I really loved working at that elementary school in so many ways. It was a great fit for me, but it was also really, really intense. And I've described it to folks as you walk in the door, your pants are on fire, and they are on fire all day long until the time when you can leave. I would hide in the closet sometimes just to be able to get certain work done that I couldn't do otherwise. Of course, we carried radios around everywhere, and it was a lot. It was definitely a lot. So, and then even when we would leave at the end of the day, there was still oftentimes a lot of work to be done. So it was really intense. I'm really glad that I did it. But after I got done and I got my LPC, I had a colleague who was working at the school with me who said he was going to start working for a group practice. And he invited me to join him, and they let me come and work with them. So I learned there, I was working with all adults as a therapist for the first time. And I realized pretty quickly that there was a lot that I did not know about being a therapist. And my work as a school counselor was really different, and I was not prepared. It was really, really hard at the time because I was fully licensed and I'd been working in the field of counseling for a number of years at that point. So the people who I was working with and for at the group practice literally told me that they were disappointed in me because I think they really expected for me to have skills and training and understanding of things that I just didn't. And it's no fault or blame towards the people who gave me supervision. But I realized later that what I actually needed was to get supervision for clinical work. I needed to actually do some clinical experiences and have a supervisor that could work with me around how to do clinical stuff that's really different from the school counseling stuff. And I hadn't gotten that. And so I realized that I needed to go back and get more training. I needed to get a consultant / supervisor who could help me fill in those gaps and really be prepared for what I was doing as a therapist. So I ended up leaving the group practice and I went back to working in schools full time. But I was also doing a lot of training and consultation to help me with getting what I needed to be a therapist working with adults. And after a few years, I got to the place where I am now. So, as I said in the beginning of this video, I started working more kind of a little bit on the side while doing full-time school counseling, and then eventually got to where I was doing half-time school counseling and half-time private practice, and then now I'm doing full-time private practice. So what I'm hoping to do with this channel and these videos is to help people that I have been supervising or other supervisors who are working with school counselors, or just any of you who are school counselors that are just considering private practice and wanting to know more and maybe wanting some support to be able to get the nuts and bolts of what does it actually look like, what are the steps to getting there. And I'm going to go through in future videos and talk about things like just how do you get your license as a therapist, and then things like business logistics, stuff like accounting and banking, taxes, just what it takes to start a small business in the first place. And then the clinical considerations, things like treatment modalities, treatment planning, what kind of paperwork you would want to get set up. And I'll give you examples and I'll share my own templates and things with folks just to try to help make things easier. And then things like taking insurance. If you want to be a provider that accepts insurance, I'll give you ideas about different options for doing that. So whether you are just starting out and you're doing school counseling after having just graduated potentially, or if you've been at this for a while and you're just wanting to see what else you might be able to do with a private practice, and whether you're wanting to do something more just as a kind of side hustle versus eventually going full time, I'm hoping that these videos will help you get the basics. And of course, you'll want to also be working with professionals that can help you individually. But I think school counselors deserve to have these different kinds of options available to you. I want to see school counselors feel empowered. And so that's really what this is about for me. In the next video, I'm going to talk more with you about a few questions that you may want to just step back and ask yourself as you consider, is private practice right for me? So join me there. And in the meantime, again, if you did find this video to be helpful, useful, please like, subscribe, share so other folks can also find it. And let me know in the comments if you have feedback for me, if you have things that you would like me to do with this channel besides what I've talked about. And until next time, please remember, you have options and opportunities. I'll see you soon.